All right. Welcome. How you guys doing? You ready? I am extremely excited about tonight. I have no idea how many people are going to show up. Because it's not like, I don't know how much of a hook Animorphs is for people. But it should be. That's kind of the point of tonight. So I'm going to try and basically convince people why they should be hype over Animorphs. Because it's a crazy, crazy series. It is Morbid time, that's true. See, normally this is the part of the stream where I would tell you about my day and make little observations, but honestly, most of what I did today was prepare for stream and work. Did a lot of work as well. I believe the final count is 135 slides for StoryCorps tonight. And I left out a lot, by the way. It's 62 books I'm trying to summarize. Like, I'm just fully leaving out, like, huge chunks of it. Because I just want to talk about the crazy stuff. Actually, that's not even fair. There's crazy stuff I'm leaving out. But yeah. Lucky, how is, Alright, hour of randomly timed silence? Sure. How was your week, Lucky? Silence broken by. I don't want to do random meme sound effects. Sitcom laugh track was good, but I don't feel like... Kickball noise? Do you have a specific request for your hour of silence broken up by someone? Megalovania? Alright. Right. Is that loud enough? I can't make it louder. Alright. I was telling Mo that when I added that command, I was like, I don't think people realize how good that's going to be. I think that is going to kind of be one of those things that, like, nobody's going to use it until one person does, and then I fully anticipate it's going to be on cooldown. You know what I mean? Yo, hour of silence broken up by the riff from Bad to the Bone. That's tight. Alois, what was the highlight of your week? Or anybody. But I do want to hear Atlas's. I have had a very busy weekend, and also I've streamed for 4 days in a row. So I don't have, like... I don't have a lot of stories that I didn't tell yesterday. IDK. Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing with everybody. It's really awesome that you don't know what the best part of your week was. Had a good couple of coffee days. Oh, had some pretty good coffee a few days ago. Gotcha. Nice. Where from? I went to a magic store. Yeah, that's true. Mo, so I have a what's called a cube, right? Hi, Mom and Dad. Hello. So what's called a cube, which is just like a big collection of magic cards that you play with. And I like to have some sentimental value to the cards in the cube. So I had Mo get a couple of cards for the cube while she's in Colorado Springs. Because I love Colorado Springs. I feel like something's up with my audio real quick. Compression. Hello? Oh well. It's fine. But yeah, let's see. What did I do today? I went on a walk. I don't have any fun walk stories today, though. What do you think? Like... Oh, I do have one from like a week ago. There was a kid outside of Fred Meyer. So, Fred Meyer opens at 7. So usually, like, if I leave the house at like 6:10, I'll get there with a couple of get there with a couple of minutes to spare, right? And you have to wait outside the store. Like 6:55 in the morning. And last week, I did that because I had a long day and I still wanted to walk. So I went crazy early. And we're standing there a few minutes before the store opens. And there's this kid there in flip-flops doing flip-flop tricks. Thank you. He's doing flip-flop tricks where he's like kicking them up and then like grabbing them. Or he was like flipping them up and then grabbing behind the back. He's just like practicing. I'm like, it's 6:55 in the morning. How do you have energy for flip-flop stunts? Based kid, that's true. Kid rules. Definitely not a local doing that cool of a task. I don't know, man. I meet cool people on my walks. Although I don't know how cool they are if they're giving me trash NPC names like they do. I feel bad because I promised Maple next time he was here for stream, I would show him the umbrella that deemed me umbrella guy. And I have it ready to go, and he's not here. So his loss. I wore this shirt with an orca on it for the Animorphs stream, but I also feel like it just goes with the Season 2 vibe. All the beach stuff. I mean, it wouldn't be a regular again for another, like, 3.5 months. Yeah, that's true. His schedule's weird. Thank you. I went to... So, a 7-Eleven gas station opened near our place. And I went there thinking... I don't know, like, it's new, and it's off of, like, an interstate, so it's probably pretty nice, right? So, they don't have gas station attendants, which if you're not from Oregon, that'll sound like I'm complaining about the most normal thing. But they don't have gas station attendants, so you have to pump your own gas, so that's cringe. Because I'm an Oregonian. I like having a servant to chop, diesel. They don't have gas station attendant. They don't have, like, their card reader doesn't take Google Pay, which I thought was just a thing because of the outdated scanners, but like, yeah. And then also like their drink selection sucks. It's much worse than a gas station selection and also much worse than a normal 7-Eleven selection. So what is the point of making a new gas station if it's the worst gas station in town? I'm getting hungry if you keep talking about stores. I just haven't left my house a lot recently, so I'm telling the stories that I have, which is going to stores. Let's see. Trying to think. Yeah, I don't know. All right. Should we get ready for StoryCorps? I want to give people a few more minutes. Because I feel like, you won't be lost if you jump in a few minutes late, but it'll definitely be a little jarring. My little mustache comb go. There we go. Oh, we should look at Dolly generations, though. I want to do an all Dolly generated Hunger Games, but it's so much work. Because each Dolly generation takes like 2 minutes, and there's 24 contestants. So I have to spend all the time that I normally do for Hunger Games prep, but also generate all the images. Elon Musk police sketch, that's pretty good. Why is the middle one so beautiful? 1993 Ronald Twingo in Skyrim? What is a Twingo? Probably that minivan. Yossified Elon Musk, that's so good. Greek philosophers playing Jenga. That's pretty good. Especially this bottom middle one. That's sick. Razer Gaming Urinal. I just think Razer Gaming anything is so funny. SpaceX launching Jesus Christ on the cross. That's pretty good. He ascended to heaven. That's how. Babies operating a guillotine at daycare? That's, you know... Have you heard of Risk Playgrounds? It's the same sort of concept. Walter White Giga Chad. I think we saw Walter White Giga Chad. Tornado in a jar. That's actually just cool. That's sick. Smurfs getting tear gassed in Portland. These could be real. That actually probably happened. Hagrid on my 600-pound life. Trail cam footage of Sonic the Hedgehog. What happened in this bottom right one? How did this come about? He's off the coop. Capybara in a maid costume? Send this to Dante. He'd love it. Alright. Let me do the little transformation for StoryCorps. Alright. I wonder if there's, like... Animal baby sensory video. Thank you. Kinda, but not really. There's dinosaurs. Does this work? Watch the TV back there. TV Adventures. Tiny TV Adventures. Bird? No, I don't think that's as good as the sunset. Dinos, please? Okay, I'll do the dinos. Baby sensory dinos. Yeah, okay, that's kind of... It's kind of Animorphs. Here, let me loop video on. There we go. Okay. And then we change the Pikachu light, and then we'll get going. Okay. Pause music. Get some sci-fi music in here. Okay. I pressed the wrong button. Stream is in fact not ending. But instead, the story core is just beginning. So, when I came up with the idea for StoryCore, the idea was, really, how can I find a platform to talk about things in a very excited and obnoxious manner? And the thing that I like talking about in an excited and obnoxious manner, maybe most of all, is the Animorphs. Because this series, if people know anything about Animorphs, generally, they recognize these book covers, right? Because they look silly. You have these kids turning into animals, and they look silly because it was the 90s, and Photoshop was a new thing, and they thought this looked cool. But what if I told you that the themes of Animorphs, if you looked past the silly covers, the themes of Animorphs include war, moral relativism, post-traumatic stress, the ethics of war crimes, human insignificance in the games of God and the devil, and also, the animals are really neat. K.A. Applegate, the author of Animorphs, wrote this insane series of 62 books, going into all of these crazy, lofty, heavy topics. And then when she was asked, why did you write that? She said, I wanted kids to find out about how cool animals are. I want you to keep that in mind while we get into talking about what happens in the course of this story. All of this, the goal of all of this, is to make kids be like, you know what would be cool if I could turn into a gecko? These are edutainment books at heart. So getting into the sci-fi stuff really quick, because it's sci-fi, so there's some stuff you just kind of need to know going into it, right? So there's Andalites. These are the good guy aliens. They are these weird centaur guys. They don't have a mouth, but they have eyes on antennas. They have a knife on their tail, which is awesome. And they don't have a mouth. So they eat by, like, standing in grass and just sort of absorbing the grass. So, yeah, Andalites they're the good guy aliens. They're cool. Yeah, Andalites, the good guys, they don't have a mouth. They're good at fighting. They invented the morphing technology that we'll get into in a little bit. And they eat with their feet. And they they're the most advanced race that we know of in the series that's currently around, right? So the bad guy aliens are the Yeerks, which are these brain slugs, which it's really hard to represent brain slugs in a presentation like this. So I'm going to use in the actual story, you can't tell that somebody has a brain slug on them. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be using the brain slugs from Futurama. Yeah, Yeerks are the bad guys. They're brain slugs. They need to eat this. They need to, like, every 3 days, they need to crawl into these, like, pools. They need to leave their host and crawl into these pools called Kandrona pools. So they need to eat every couple of days. So they can't stay in that body, in the body that they're, like, possessing for too long. Okay? But when they are controlling somebody, they are in total control of their brain. So they control, like, what they see, what they hear, what they smell, what they remember, all of it. Hey, Maple, welcome. How are you? So yeah, like, Yeerks control everything. And the, like, mean Yeerks, because we see from the perspective of people who have Yeerks in their head sometimes, the mean ones will literally just make their people relive their worst memories. Because they control the entire brain. What's going on? I'm telling people about Animorphs. It's an insane series. We're talking about the bad guy aliens. They're called Yeerks. They're brain slugs. So the big drawback, the big weakness of the Yeerks is they don't, on their own, they can't do anything. They're just slugs. They just swim around in a little pool. They're very intelligent, but they're just slugs, so they can't do anything on their own. So they have a few different species that they've conquered, right? They need to enslave species in order to do anything. So they have a few species that they've conquered. They classify them into 5 categories. There's category 1 is not fit for infestation. So, like, anything that doesn't have ears or, like, ear holes that they can crawl in. Hey, Micah, welcome. Thank you for the follow. So anything that doesn't have an ear that a slug can crawl in, like a snake. Snakes have ears, but they don't have ear holes, so the Yeerk can't get in there. So that's a class 1. Thank you. Class 2. So class 1 is like, you can't do it at all. Class 2 is you can the Yeerks can take over a class 2 alien, but why would you want to? Does that make sense? So like you can take them over. It's just there's no point. They're garbage. They're garbage bodies, right? So these are the Ged. Nobody made fan art of the Ged, so I used Animal from the Muppets. The Ged just sort of wobble around. The least useful Yeerks get put in a Ged body. Stranger Things Season 4 is garbage IMO. Watching it as we speak. That's insane that you would say that. Micah finally catching a stream. Well, thank you so much for showing up. I really, if you were ever going to catch a stream, this is the one to catch. Because I've been working on this for a good long time. And I've been trying to promote it as much as I can. Because I really think that, like, I don't think a lot of people are going to be very excited by the concept of talking about Animorphs. But they should be. And that's the point, is I'm trying to convince you that Animorphs is dope. I'm cringing watching it. You're just not correct, Maple. Okay, so yeah, the Yeerks, they have the Ged that are not, they can't fight. They can barely eat. It's better than being a slug, because you can, like, walk, but still. Maple, thanks for the alert. Class 3 is you can inhabit them, but there's major drawbacks. So, like, the Taxons are these giant centipede monsters. I use this to represent the Taxons because they're gross. Like, the art of Taxons, really gross. There's two big drawbacks of taxons. One, they're really like fragile. Doesn't take a lot to kill a taxon. And two, they have an insatiable hunger. Like constantly. They're intelligent, but they don't have much of a society because they're so consumed by the need to eat that they don't spend time thinking about like, hey, we should like invent democracy. They're too busy being like, we should eat. Like there's a gruesome part where one of them gets cut in half and the top half starts eating the bottom half. It's insane. Maddie is laughing at the idea of you searching for Animorph fan art. Maddie would be dying thinking about everything that I've done to prepare this presentation. I have scoured that wiki. This presentation is 135 slides, and I left out a lot. Another class 3 is the Hork-Bajir. The Hork-Bajir are, like, kind of perfect, because they're awesome, like, dinosaur monster guys, and they have lasers, and they're intelligent, and they can move very quickly, and they have swords for hands, and they're awesome. The drawback to the Hork-Bajir is there's like 300 of them in the universe. Right? So like, you can't, the Hork-Bajir are great, and the Yeerks actually have taken over the entire Hork-Bajir homeworld, but that's only like a couple hundred Hork-Bajir. Then there's class 4, which is, they're perfect hosts, but they're really hard to, you can't take them over very easily. Like the Andalites are amazing hosts, but only one Yeerk has ever gotten to take over an Andalite because the Andalites are just so advanced. It's really hard to beat them, right? And then there's class 5. That's us. Because we're able-bodied, and there's a lot of us. So in the world of Animorphs, the thing that makes humans unique is that there's billions of humans. Like, no other planet has billions of sentience. That's like the big reason that that's why it takes place on Earth, basically. Ants are a class 1 because they don't have ears. His prep is hilarious. Yeah, it's 135 slides. And again, I had to make some hard decisions about, like, there's arcs that I cut. There's huge chunks of this that I had to leave out, unfortunately. I thought this was a series about kids turning into animals. One would think, because a lot of it's, most people think, like, what they remember is the book covers, and then they kind of assume, like, oh, it's kind of like they're looking for jawbreakers in the cul-de-sac. Like, they're just all hanging out, right? No. We haven't even gotten into, like, the trauma. Yeah. So, the Animorphs. There's 5 Animorphs when we start off the series. Thank you for the one Morbitus. Okay. So there's 5 Animorphs. This is what the book would have you believe they look like. I think that this is cringe, and I don't want to talk about these kids. So instead, I've made my own representations. So I'm going to go through each of them, and I'll talk about like their strengths, their weaknesses, and how they deal with trauma. Because all the 3 of those things are going to be important. So this is Jake. I don't know how many of you remember, but back in the day, it was assumed that anytime you had like an ensemble cast, anytime you had a bunch of like a team up of any kind, you would have a basic, boring white guy as your leader. That's Jake. Like the Red Ranger from Power Rangers. Like that was just how it went. And that was Jake. He's very boring. He's not very interesting. In theory, his big strength is that he's a natural leader, but he doesn't do a lot of leading. They just talk about how much of a leader Jake is. It's garbage. His biggest weakness, he's kind of dumb. He does not, like, he never has the, like, eureka aha moment. Yeah. And the way he deals with trauma is he just gets hard. He just, like, becomes more and more desensitized to it. So then there's Cassie, who's the horse girl of the team. Cassie's big benefit, like her big strength, is she's really empathetic, which in a lot of circumstances ends up being very beneficial. And her other big draw is her parents are veterinarians. Who's that pick? I looked up black woman overalls. I didn't have like that. Most of these have like a celebrity that represents them. This one is just a woman from Google Images. I don't know what to tell you. She's drinking soda? Yeah. Cassie is, so the other big benefit to Cassie is her parents are veterinarians at a exotic wildlife reserve, which gives basically a plot reason that they have access to tigers. So, you know, and then her biggest weakness is, she is not cut out for war. You'll see she makes a lot of mistakes happen because Cassie feels bad about it. And then the way she deals with trauma is like she just feels everything. And she feels guilty all the time. She's constantly aware of like life around her and how much death happens. Cassie has a hard time. Then there's Marco, who is represented by Jose Canseco here. I'll explain why he's Jose Canseco in a minute. But basically, Marco... okay, how do I... Marco's biggest strength, and we'll talk about this more, Marco's biggest strength is his endurance, because Marco gets disemboweled a lot. Marco is ripped in half several times. Marco is decapitated a few times. And he keeps, we'll get into it. But yeah, that's Marco. His biggest weakness is he jokes about everything. He is not good in serious situations because he just wants to joke about it. He wants somebody else to be the person who is serious and thinks stuff through. Polo. Yeah, that's a good joke. I hope you do that every time, Lucky. The way he deals with trauma is he makes jokes about it. He turns everything into humor. And then there's Rachel, who is represented here by Ronda Rousey, because Rachel goes hard. Rachel is here to fight. She loves the blood. And every single book, there's a part where it introduces Rachel, and it's like, Rachel's really pretty. She dresses, she loves wearing dresses, and she does gymnastics, and she's a girly girl, but also she parties. She goes hard. She's so strong, and, they call her a warrior princess all the time. So she's Ronda Rousey. Her, benefit, if you need something punched, Rachel is game. Rachel would love to be that person for you. Her biggest drawback, she does not think very much before doing that punching. Rachel, punches first and asks questions later. Which, by the way, sometimes they frame as a bad thing when it is not. Sometimes they'll get mad at her and be like, Rachel, you should have thought that through more. And it's like, no, what? Anyway. And then the way she deals with trauma, she kind of falls in love with it. She gets more and more just enamored with the violence. And, yeah. Then there's Tobias, who's a loner with a rough home life. So he's represented by Eminem. Yeah. Tobias is just kind of a weird dude. His biggest strengths is, he's also really smart. Which one Perma turns into a hawk? We're gonna talk about it, I promise you. So Tobias is really smart and really observant, and also like there's certain parts of morphing that Tobias just sort of gets. Oh, that's another thing. Cassie's other like big strength is she is definitely the best morpher. So like we'll talk about the rules of morphing in a minute, but the more skilled you are, the more practiced you are at morphing, you can start doing different stuff. Like normally when you morph, you can't morph with your clothes. But as you get better at it, you can morph with like skin tight clothes. But like Cassie can morph with the overalls, no problem. Cassie's a pro. Cassie can like morph part of her body and not the rest of it. And that's like when she meets Andalites, they're like, that's actually super impressive. Tobias has some of that. Tobias is pretty good at morphing. His biggest weakness, he doesn't like communicating very much. Because again, he's a loner. And the way he deals with trauma is he gets very existential. Like, Tobias gets very... We'll talk about... Tobias takes stuff hard. Stuff affects Tobias pretty intensely. Okay. Other major characters. Principal Chapman. And honestly, I started this section before realizing, like, I just can't talk about that many other major characters. But here's Principal Chapman. He does come up again. But it's not... I didn't need this slide in here, but here it is. Okay, let's get into the story. So, the gang is all at the mall. Marco and Jake are there, playing video games. Rachel and Cassie are hanging out. And then Tobias is also there. He's like getting bullied or something, and Jake stops it, and then they all just sort of hang out after. Show me a picture of Jay-Z. Okay, one second. Jay-Z doing things. I need to... Computer, show me pictures of Jay-Z. Okay. Nope, wrong button again. Okay, here's Jay-Z being confused at a basketball game. Okay, so they're all hanging out at the mall. Doing various things. They're all sort of... They're not there together. They're not really friends yet. They're just, you know. But they decide to take a shortcut, leaving the mall. They take a shortcut through an abandoned construction site. As people do, I guess. But while they're taking this shortcut, an alien ship crash lands. He's so confused. Yeah, there's a lot of pictures where he just doesn't seem to know what's going on. Yeah, so an alien ship crash lands. I don't know what's going on the TV back there, but it's fine. Alien ship crash lands. And it opens up, and there's a guy in there. There's an Andalite in the ship, and his name is Prince Elfingor. Elfingor will come up later in the story. And he basically is like, hey, listen. I know that you are 4 random children, but basically, there was just a battle above Earth. There was a big space battle above Earth. And I'm the only one who got out of there. We were here to defend your planet, and we're gone now. We got wiped out. Thank you very much, Megalovania. We got wiped out. We were the defenders of Earth, and we're all dead now. So I'm going to give you guys superpowers. That feels very close together. I'm going to give you kids superpowers. And you guys need to defend Earth until more Andalites show up. It's probably like a year. So this is the first of several times that somebody recruits child soldiers in the Animorphs series. That will come up again, I promise you. So Elfingor drafts some child soldiers and says, defend your planet because there's an alien invasion. Don't trust anybody. There's brain slugs. All right, I'm going to die peacefully in the ship now. Yeah, child soldier alarm. That'll come up again, I promise. So he gives them this morphing power, which I'll get in. So the rules of morphing, if you stay, you can morph into any creature that you have come into physical contact with and like intentionally absorbed their DNA. So that's what they call acquiring it. And when they do that, the animal like goes into a trance. So they're not in like danger. Make a child soldier alarm emote. That's pretty good. Yeah. Hopefully that won't come up very often on my stream outside of Animorphs. But, you know. So, you can morph into an animal that you've acquired. Acquiring animals is relatively easy. You just need to get in physical proximity with them, and then you kind of like hypnotize them, right? If you stay in that form for more than 2 hours, you get stuck there, and you can't morph back. You get stuck as whatever you transformed into. In Andalite society, they call it a Nothlit, and it's like they pity you. It is, if you stay in morph too long, you're stuck there, and it sucks. Oh, and when you morph, you are a perfect genetic copy of what you acquired. Okay? So, like, if you morph into a tiger that had a broken leg, you won't have a broken leg. Because the DNA doesn't account for a broken leg. My last bit. Thank you for the 1 bit. But also, when you morph back, you'll be a perfect genetic copy. Right? So, you may be thinking to yourself, this is a huge intergalactic conflict between 2 species that have spaceships and lasers and weapons on a huge cosmic scale, right? How does turning into a dog help you at all? Well, like I said, you turn into a perfect genetic copy. Same when you morph back. So the real strength of the morphing technology is not being able to turn into a gorilla. The strength is that when you morph back, you will be completely healed. So really, the benefit, as long as you have enough brain function to morph back, you are invincible. So this is how I was talking about Marco gets disemboweled a lot. The reason that the morphing technology is valuable is that you can like turn into a gorilla, have your guts ripped out, morph back really quick, and then morph back into a gorilla and get back at it. It's gruesome. And I don't entirely know why she wrote this for a book that was targeted for 8 to 11-year-olds, but there it is. So that's the morphing technology. Prince Elfingor dying in a ship gives them the morphing technology. And you think, now he's going to just die peacefully. Except, we are introduced to our bad guy. This is Visser 3. You remember how I said 1 brain slug ever has taken over an Andalite body? That is Visser 3. And Visser 3, like, okay. I love Visser 3 very much. Everybody does. You should too. Visser 3 is just like, we're going to talk about a lot of moral ambiguity throughout this series. Don't worry about any of that for Visser 3. Visser 3 is just evil, and he loves being evil. Have you read these books? I've read a few of them because a lot of them have been like uploaded online. I read the wiki for every book and like most of the wiki pages as well. But yeah, Visser 3 is excellent. These books are crazy. We're in book 1 of 62. This is what I'm saying is like, you're right. This book is crazy. That's why I want people to know about it. This is Visser 3. He's the only Andalite to ever be taken over by a Yeerk. Yeah. Did an AI write these books? Oh, I can't wait to show you where this goes. Okay, so Visser 3 is joyfully evil. He's just, it's like like Darth Vader or Doctor Doom, where they're just so purely supervillain. It's just wonderful. I love Visser 3. Visser 3 loves eating people. He turns into monsters all the time because he has an Andalite body, so he can morph, which is sick. So Visser 3 shows up, and you're like, oh man, Elfangor just peacefully died, right? No. Visser 3 shows up, the kids all hide, and then he turns into a big monster. He's like, Prince Elfangor, I've been waiting a long time to get you. Don't worry, I've picked the perfect monster to eat you. It takes a long time for this monster to digest its food, and it swallows things whole. He turns into this giant monster and eats Prince Elfangor in front of the children. The children are hiding and see all of this happen. So, Andalites don't have mouths, so they, like, communicate telepathically. Like, they can't read minds, but they can speak mentally. It's called thought speak. Oh, also, when you morph, you have thought speak. So when you morph, you're able to telepathically communicate to the other people in morph. Forgot to mention that. So, Prince Elfangor is psychically connected to each of the kids while he's being eaten, screaming in pain mentally, and it says in the book, we never forgot that scream. We're in book 1! And they're already traumatized! Immediately! Mondays, am I right? Yeah, exactly. It was on a Monday, crazy enough. I don't know if that's true. But yeah, so, right out the gate, they're traumatized. Visser 3 is the worst. Okay, so, the gang get out of there. They figure out, hey, this all really happened. I can turn into my dog. This is gonna be great. We're gonna be superheroes. We're gonna go do cool stuff. Yeah, that was kind of messed up last night, but it's like our Uncle Ben moment, right? It's all gonna be happy after this. It's like Hunger Games. I would not describe some of the things that happen in this series doing the Hunger Games book. Or doing the Hunger Games series. So they're all stoked to go be superheroes, right? So they go to Cassie's parents' wildlife reserve, and they acquire some battle morphs, some animals that'll be good at fighting, right? So Jake gets himself a tiger, which is cool. It's like, so these are like their signature animals for most of the series. Cassie gets a wolf, but honestly, Cassie's mostly useless in fights. The only fights she's ever useful in are underwater things because she's a great dolphin. Mrs. Eefels, you're late. Welcome. I'm sorry we can't do a whole recap. Luckily, we're only in book 1, but you still missed a great deal of context. So Cassie can turn into a wolf. That's her battle morph. But she's not very useful in a fight anyway. Really? Cassie's signature morph is a horse. Because, again, she's a horse girl. She's not good in a fight. Thank you, Megalovania. Marco turns into a gorilla. This is why I went with this picture of Jose Canseco, because I really like him sitting next to this gorilla, both with their arms crossed. It's okay, my fault. I'll catch up. Yeah, so Marco can turn into a gorilla. He loves the gorilla. I love that when I unmuted, the first thing I heard was Megalovania. That's awesome. It's great timing. Marco turns into a gorilla, and he mostly sticks with the gorilla. I think that's Harambe. You would be correct. Rachel turns into an elephant because Rachel loves power. She acquires another signature morph later that we'll talk about, but she's an elephant for the first little bit. I wish allergies were a physical thing I could assault. Yeah, you're talking like Rachel, actually. Rachel's always trying to punch stuff. Tobias acquires a hawk, and everybody's like, hey, we're a bear, a wolf, a gorilla, and an elephant. I don't know about this whole... I don't know if a hawk is... And Tobias is like, no, it's good. I'll go for their eyes. Which actually does kind of happen. Tobias successfully gouges people's eyes out in literally every book that I've read personally. And I checked the wiki. Apparently nobody was keeping track of whether or not he does it in every book. But every book I've read all the way through personally, he successfully takes people's eyes out. So, the gang has acquired their battle morphs. They're really ready to go. So you remember how I mentioned that Yerks need to, every 3 days, crawl into this pool so they can eat the Kandrona pools? How are these kid series? I have no idea. So the Yerks need to crawl into these pools to eat every 3 days. And if they don't, they die. Right? So they locate one of the entrances to their big Kandrona pool. Okay? So the kids are really like, this is sick. We got turned into superheroes. We're going to go attack the Yerks at this Yerk pool. And it's going to be great. Immediate disaster. The first mission they ever go on goes horribly wrong. They decide... So, basically, what happens is they send in Tobias first, because he picked a small morph, and they were like, oh, it is actually useful. Tobias, you go first, and scout things out. See if it's gonna... See what our plan of attack is gonna be. He gets in there, and then people go into the room that he's hiding in as a hawk up in the rafters. And the people stay there. And he can't demorph. He can't fight all of these people with brain slugs in them as a hawk. And he definitely can't get out of there alive. So he's stuck there. This is book 1. Their first mission, Tobias gets stuck as a hawk. Tobias is a hawk forever now. Immediate consequences. End of book 1. Like, usually you think that, like, oh, with the world building stuff, like the whole, you can only be morphed for 2 hours. That's just more of a, like, plot thing, right? No, immediately. That won't actually come up in the story. Immediately happens. He's stuck as a hawk forever. He will die as a hawk. So, this is a big wake-up call for all of the kids. They're like, okay, there's real consequences to this. Tobias's life is ruined. They can't tell his mom. Tobias really isn't that broken up about it because, like, the family part, because he didn't have a great home life anyway. But, like, he can't tell his mom because he's a bird. Nobody else can go to his mom and be like, hey, you know Tobias, your son, he's never coming home. He got turned into a bird. So if you ever see a red-tailed hawk, it might be your son. You can't. So his life is over. And this makes everybody be like, okay, we need to be a lot more careful. We need to think this through. And really, we need to consider if we want to fight this battle, right? Because this is 2 alien races that have nothing to do with us. Do we even want this fight? Tobias, you're dumb as heck. At least get stuck like a panther or something. Well, the nice thing is, he can still, like, now that he's stuck as a hawk, he can still exist, like, in his neighborhood. Like, he still flies around the woods most of the days. Also, so Tobias loves being a hawk after a little bit. Tobias loves being a hawk. He lives for finding good thermal updrafts. He talks about it constantly. So, like, interspersed with, like, gruesome violence and, like, Marco's disemboweled again. And then it will have another page where it's like, bro, I found this sick thermal. It was so nice. It was great. Do these kids have parents? Yeah, I can talk about each of their parents, actually. So, Tobias has a mom, no dad, and his mom is, like, not a great mother in the first place. She's very sad. It doesn't go into it very much at all. Rachel's parents are divorced, and it's a pretty messy divorce, and they put Rachel in some spots that are really unfair to put a kid in. Like, they're constantly, like, competing for her affection. Her dad moves to Chicago, and it makes her feel really bad for not going with him. It's messed up. So she feels like she has no control in her home life, which is one of the reasons that she tries so hard to have control. Yeah, thank you, Megalovania. With her body, which, how much more control can you have over your body than being an Animorph, right? Marco's mom died about a year before the book started in a boating accident, and his dad is like a engineer at NASA. He's like wicked smart, and he mostly just pours his time into work. He tries to be a good dad, but it's hard being a single parent, right? And he's still learning because it's only been a year. That's relatively fresh. Cassie's parents are wonderful. They're veterinarians. Her dad in particular. So we'll talk about it a little bit when we talk about the 6th Animorph. Her dad makes this chili that he swears by, but none of the kids like eating it. So every time they go over, it's too spicy for them, but he keeps making it because he's like, no, they'll get used to the spicy. But he's just like a dorky dad. Cassie's parents are great. Jake's parents are like just very dumb. That's really all it is. Like, yeah, they're fine. They're just dumb. Okay, so that is book 1. Books 1 through 6 are really good. Because basically, book 1 sets up all that stuff and Tobias gets stuck as a hog. And then books 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are each individual character basically finding their reason to fight. It's great. If you decide you want to read any of these, I recommend books 1 through 6, and then also there's a book called the Andalite Chronicles Visser. That is just really good as well. And you get more Visser 3, which is great. Anyway, the gang needs to decide if they're going to fight in this weird space war. Tobias, so we're getting into thank you. Tobias's book, which is book 2. We're going to talk about a lot of heavy stuff because it's Animorphs and you have to. This one is rough. So if you feel a little overwhelmed already, I won't take it personally. If you take 5 minutes off, come back because the Tobias book is heavy. This is book 2 of a series where the target age is 8 to 13. Okay, so Tobias is stuck as a bird, and you get his perspective basically like trying to grapple with, okay, my human life as I knew it is over. I don't get to be a normal person anymore. This is so messed up. The other thing about being, about morphing, is when you morph, you gain the instincts of the animal, right? And basically, like, especially when you first morph into a new animal, it's really hard because you have to basically, like, grapple with the will of the animal and have your human will triumph over the instinct, right? So he's grappling with, like, I still am Tobias, but I have all these bird instincts. And he's like flying around, and all of the Animorphs are trying to do their best to be good friends, and they all leave out food on their windowsills, but it's like cheeseburgers and stuff, because they're like, he's still human. He's just in a bird body. So they're leaving out junk food for him, and he just picks it off of each of their windows, right? But he's flying around, and he'll, like, have this hawk instinct where he'll catch a glimpse of a mouse. And he'll be like, oh, I gotta eat that. And be like, wait. No. I am a child. I'm a human boy. I don't eat mice. Okay? He's grappling with this the whole time. And then, eventually, after the events of this book, including one thing where they kind of destroy a used car dealership with a mascot named Price Cut Polly. It's a whole story. Anyway, one poor mouse becomes the victim of Tobias's character development, and you get like 2 pages of Tobias graphically describing ripping apart a mouse and eating it. And like, he's talking about like the texture of tendons. A book for 8 to 13-year-olds. Thank you, Megalovania. So he's eating this mouse, and he hates how much he enjoys it. Because everything about the hawk part of his brain is stoked. Finally, we're done with the junk food, and we get to do what hawks do, and that is rip mice apart. So he is disgusted by himself that he enjoyed eating a mouse like that. Tobias attempts to take his own life in this book. He tries to fly at his full top speed into the side of a building, and Rachel opens the door at the last second. I didn't add a picture here because I don't want to make light of something this dark. Instead, I just posted the Scholastic summary of this book where it says ages 8 to 12. Just a reminder, we're on book 2 of a series for 8 to 12-year-olds. Yeah. So basically, Tobias finds his reason to fight. It's, from his perspective, his human life is over. So from here on, it's death or fighting. Straight up. Poor kid? Yeah. Now, through the rest of the series, he really does love being a hawk. He takes to being a hawk really well. But at the start, it's mostly that he's resisting enjoying it, right? After he kind of gives in, he's like, oh, wait, no, I am great at being a hawk. After he starts looking for thermals and he starts talking about how much he loves thermals, it really all comes around for Tobias. Yeah, and then he starts taking eyes. He loves gouging out eyes and finding thermals. Okay, Jake's book. Jake is my least favorite Animorph. If I breeze over Jake, it's because he's the worst. Jake's brother is a controller. Jake's brother is controlled by a Yerk, and he decides, I'm gonna fight because my brother is controlled by a Yerk. Who cares, Jake? Like, all of this is Tobias, like, grappling, and then Jake is like, oh, my brother's a Yerk. So I gotta save him, so I gotta keep fighting. Cool, man. Okay, then we get to Rachel's book, which is dope. So in the first couple of pages, she gets, like, cartoonishly harassed, and they go to, these creeps in an alleyway go to get physical. Like, they start to approach her like they're, yeah. And then she turns into an elephant and crushes their car. Incredible! We love Rachel. That's so sick. And then Jake is like, you really shouldn't have. What if they had been Yerks? Shut up, Jake. It is entirely self-defense. Jake's a moron. I thought you were going to say she kills them. No, but she gives them a real good scare. Rachel kind of does that a lot, actually. So they all agree to this rule that Jake makes up, that they're not going to do anything fun as animals. They're not going to do any of it for personal gain. It's only going to be to fight this war, right? Rachel routinely does awesome stuff as an elephant and a bear. Like, there's a part where they go to a circus and there's a guy like a Russian guy being mean to the circus elephants. So she turns into an elephant and like disguises herself with them. And then she grabs him and like grabs like a pen and writes on the wall that like, I'm from the International Elephant Police. This was a sting operation. We got you. Release all of these elephants. Excellent. Love Rachel. Okay. So Rachel in this book has a friend on the gymnastics squad who she figures out her parents have yerks. They have brain slugs. So through this book where she's doing all this like fighting and all this stuff, she basically at the end is like, okay, I didn't like that. No. I don't like fighting. Obviously it's gruesome. I'm doing this because my friend has a control. I have to help my friend. But like as time goes on, it becomes more and more evident. Rachel's not in it to save people. Rachel is in it to kill people. Hydrate? 3 hydrates. You got it. 1. 2. I went too fast on that one. I might have the hiccups, and that's gonna suck. 3. Thanks for the hydrates. Okay. That's Rachel. She's the best. Okay, so now we get to Marco's book. And Marco wants out the game. Marco is like, I can appreciate that you guys have all decided to take up this fight. I feel like I'm the one who gets chopped up every single fight we go into. And I don't know what's happening. By the way, I feel like a gorilla's a good morph. I don't know how I keep getting chopped up like this. But every single time, I'm the one who has to, like, pick up my intestines off the ground. I'm gonna quit. I'll do one last mission with you guys. Because I'm tired of knowing what my internal organs look like. The mission that's like the last straw for him is he literally gets his head cut off as a gorilla by a Hork-Bajir. And he's like, you have got to be kidding me. With my like dying moment, I thought to turn back into a human. And that's the only reason I'm still here. This is messed up. I am out the game. I am not... Whatever. This isn't me. I'm going to go hang out with my dad. There's a quote in the book where I forget the exact quote. It's been a while since I've actually read them. But in the book, he says something along the lines of, I can't keep doing this because I can't make my dad go visit 2 graves. Because his mom died. And he's like, my dad's already mourning. I can't do that to him twice. So Marco's out the game. However, this is when we get introduced to Visser 1. Who's the Yerk in charge of the whole invasion of Earth. And Visser 1 is basically why the invasion looks the way it does. Okay? So, Visser 1 doesn't, like, Visser 3 is all about, like, I'm gonna turn into a big monster and eat them. Visser 3's mentality is like, hey, 3 billion is still a lot of people. If we kill half the people on Earth, that's fine as long as we have the other half. Visser 1 is a lot more like... Visser 1's thought is, if we can have people willingly become hosts, then we will have more people, and also, we won't have to worry about, like, it's hard to keep that many people enslaved when you have to come out of their body every 3 days to eat. Like, you have to lock them in a cage while you get in the Kendrona pool. So her thought is, we're going to make a little cult. So she starts a youth group. Called the something. I forget what the youth group's called. It'll come to me. They start a youth group, though. And then we get introduced to Visser 1, Uh-oh, it's Marco's mom. Marco's mom's not dead. She's Visser 1. So Marco cannot be out the game anymore. Thanks for the hydrate, Birdie. You're telling me the entire time my youth pastor was just trying to get me brain food? Yeah, now's a good time to say that, like, all of my work as a youth worker has been an elaborate ploy to try and get you to accept a slug into your head. So Marco makes his decision to fight because he has to get his mom back. Especially because his dad has started dating a new woman and he's very uncomfortable with it. Because Marco realizes, wait, mom is still alive. And dad is now dating this random who Marco does not like. And there's more of that later. What if one of them turned to shrimp and fried rice? Bro. That'd be so sick. Okay, Cassie does not like being an Animorph at all. She likes the animals part. She does not like the killing part at all. Because that's the other thing is, like... So, if you capture... Excuse me. If you capture a Yerk and can keep them in, like, a locked cell for 3 days, the Yerk will die and fall out of their body. Right? Like, you can kill a Yerk while saving the human. But it's so much effort, and you basically need to guard them for 72 consecutive hours. Because it's so much effort, you can't... That's no way to fight a war. So, you have to... They kill people. They kill some of the controllers. And they have to grapple with that. And that tears Cassie up inside. You say she hates violence, but she looks so happy. I had one image of this woman. I'm sorry. Okay. So they start receiving this weird radio signal from the ocean. So they start getting this radio signal from the ocean. And they're like, we gotta go follow that signal. And then they start hearing, the closer they get, they start hearing thought speak. Like their telepathic communication when they're in morph, right? So they turn into dolphins, and they go find the source of the thought speak, right? And when they morph into dolphins, they're like, oh, the instinct in this morph is weird. They just want to have fun. Like, oh, we just want to have fun. And they have trouble, like, doing the mission because they just are trying to have a good time. And Tobias is also, like, flying above, and he's like, I wish I could be a dolphin. I'm stuck as a bird. How does morphing work? Do they choose what they morph into? Yeah, so they have to come into contact with an animal, be like, intentionally try and acquire them, and then they can morph into that forever. Yeah. Okay, so they morph into dolphins to go find the source of this signal. And then a shark shows up. Like a bunch of sharks show up, and they are not equipped. And they're about to get got by these sharks. And then a whale shows up. Now, this part is strange. Because K.A. Applegate, Catherine Alice Applegate, the author kind of... she says that the whales have thought speak, and the whales are also telepathic. They're just normal whales. They're not like aliens. She's just saying that aliens are magic, basically. I don't know. It's weird, but the whale saves them from the shark, and they find this pod. This pod that inside this, like, dome under the water, there's a grassy field. Okay? So, remember how I was saying that Andalites eat grass with their feet? So, when Andalites go into battle, their big battleships they have a part full of grass, like the feeding area, that detaches from the fighter part and goes to a safe place. So this little pod, they put like a very young Andalite rookie in the pod with the grassy field and sent it to go be safe under the ocean. How cool is this guy? Welcome, Lem. We're talking about Animorphs. It's a weird series. I wish I could recap for you, but I can't. It's just, you gotta head on a swivel, because it's gonna get weird. Okay, so Cassie has made her decision to fight, and she basically decides that she's gonna fight because her interaction with whales was so meaningful to her that she's gonna fight for, like, basically life on Earth, animals on Earth. Which is kind of messed up because everybody else is fighting for, like, humans. And Cassie's like, but what about the whales? Cassie sucks. Okay, so they find this ship. They find this little dome. Took me a minute, but I do remember these. Yeah, okay, most people remember the covers. Kids turn into animals to save Earth. Yeah, that's the basic overarching thing. You are leaving out the disemboweling, but yeah, that's the synopsis. But yeah, so they find this dome, and they meet Axe. This is Axe. He is an Andalite, but he's like a teenager. So he's the 6th Animorph, and so he is the brother of Prince Elfangor. You remember what I was talking about? The guy who gave them the morphing power? Axe is that guy's brother. Axe is a new recruit, and he is really trying to prove himself in the Andalite army because everybody's like, you're only here because your brother's a war hero. And Axe is here to prove himself. And then in his first ever real mission, his entire squad got wiped out. And he got trapped under the ocean and needed to be saved by some humans. And then he meets them and he's like, wait a second, you guys have morphing ability? How can you guys morph? And they're like, oh, Elfangor gave it to us. And he's like, Elfangor? Broke Ciro's kindness? And everybody's like, I don't know what Ciro's kindness is, but he gave us superpowers if that's what you're talking about. We'll talk about Ciro's kindness in a second. I remember seeing these books in school. I didn't think they were so graphic. Nobody did! Everybody slept on Animorphs. That's why we're talking about it. Because nobody will listen to me in normal circumstances. So this is what it's all been about. All of my time on Twitch has been building to this moment where I get to ramble about Animorphs. So Axe is like, okay, well, I don't know how to feel about you guys having powers, but I guess I'm going to help you for now. So you know how I said, like, more experienced you are with morphing, the better you are at it, you can do some cool stuff? So he acquires each of the Animorphs, their human forms. He, like, acquires them, and then he morphs into a, like, combination of all 5 of them. It's really cool. So, yeah. But when he turns into a human, you get some very interesting stuff that happens. Like, one, you will notice this guy does not have a mouth. He has never tasted anything, because they don't taste things with their feet. They just absorb nutrients from the grass that they're standing in. He doesn't have a mouth. So when he turns into a human and he can taste things for the first time, he's like, you guys don't have any idea how special you are as a species. And he just starts eating all kinds of stuff. Like, they go to Cassie's place. Remember the chili I was talking about? And nobody likes the chili because it's too spicy? It's his first time ever eating spicy food. So there's a part where he's, like, crying and snot is falling out of his nose, and he's just eating, like, 3 bowls of it, and he's just eating through the pain and the spice, and he looks at her dad, and he's got tears and snot, and he's like, May I please have more? And his dad is like, I like this kid. He gets it. He's been skipping arm day too. He is a child and also a weird horseman. He doesn't have a mouth, but he does have abs. That's Andalites. So, also, so that his biggest thing is Cinnabons. So, like, they go to the Cinnabon place, and he basically goes into a full-on, like, rampage in the Cinnabon, like, ripping up the tables, trying to get to more Cinnabon. There's a part later in the series where, he, like, gets a job at Cinnabon to get closer access to more Cinnabons. And, like, there's a part where his boss is like, hey, can you go clean off the tables? And Axe is like, no problem. And he licks all the crumbs off the tables. There's a part in one of the books narrated by him where he says, like, humans are strange. They believe that their music is really good. They really like their music. It is not good. None of it sounds good. It is all just weird noises. However, they seem to not realize that they have created the greatest thing in the universe, which is the cinnamon bun. It's very funny and very cute. He's got 7 fingers. Yeah, they also have extra fingers. You want me to go through every weird thing about Andalites? They're weird alien centaur guys. But yeah, so Axe. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, now we're going to start getting into, like, the arcs, right? This is the part where I'm going to start jumping around a little bit. Most of the books follow a pretty basic structure where it's like they have to go get a thing to help fight the Yeerks, and they need to turn into a specific animal to go get that thing. And then you learn about the animal, but when they turn into it, you get a bunch of animal facts. That's the basic, like, edutainment cycle. We're going to kind of skip around. Know that I am intentionally cherry-picking the most interesting stuff. But the most of the pages are dedicated to relatively fun little romps. And then most of the time they have, like, a third act fight, and that's where the disemboweling happens. And how they, like, yeah. Okay, so Jake gets infected. Jake gets a brain slug. The brain slug's name is Temrash. And they basically lock up Jake for 3 days to starve the Yeerk. To starve the brain slug off of Jake. To be honest, I don't think it would take 3 days. I think a brain slug would already be starving on Jake. But, you know. So, they starve the brain slug off of Jake. But this is the part that sucks about this. As the Yeerk dies, as the Yeerk can, like, gets further and further into starvation mode, its brain becomes more and more connected to the human. So by the end, Jake is fully experiencing the death of the Yeerk in his brain as though it was his own. And it, like, forever warps Jake. Because he's, like, for all intents and purposes, experienced starving to death. He gains all of the slug's memories. He remembers its name as Temrash. Like, he is bonded to this brain slug and feels it die. It's grim. I love Axe. Yeah, Axe is wonderful. So this is the part where Rachel's parents make her choose, and then her dad makes her feel really bad for not going to Chicago. And, like, he can't know that she's staying because she has to stay in this town to fight. But that's why. So she's really upset and feeling, like, a lot of lack of control in her life. And she tells Cassie, like, I need to get a better battle morph. And she's like, you have an elephant. You kind of arguably have the best battle morph of everybody here. I don't really think you need a better one. She's like, no, I need a better one. So she acquires a bear, which is never, okay, this is never confirmed. This is my little fan theory. I think she acquires the bear because it's more hands-on than an elephant. And Rachel loves the blood. Okay, so they get ready to attack the Yerk pool again. They found a new entrance. They're like, okay, we're all a lot better at morphing now. We got this. We're going to go after the Yerk pool again. This is where it gets strange. I know that I'm saying that after all that stuff. This is where it gets strange, where the series really goes off the rails. Please stay with me. They decide to attack the Yerk pool again. Immediate disaster. Both times they try and attack the Yerk pool early on, it goes so bad. The first time, Tobias got trapped as a hawk, and this time, they get eaten by a taxon. Remember those worms I was talking about? The real hungy hippos? They get eaten by one of those. And the book describes them being digested in this taxon, and then time freezes. This is when the gang meets God. Time freezes, and they are pulled out of the taxon and introduced to this all-powerful, wizard-looking goblin guy called the Elemist. He's not technically God, but he is interdimensionally powerful. He is, yeah. For if you know Star Trek, think Q. That sort of vibe. He's unimaginably powerful. Yeah. There's no cute anime fan art of him. Nope, this is just the Elemist. There is a band named after the Elemist. I think that's fun. This cannot be an actual plot point. It's real. They're pulled out of a taxon by God. It gets weirder too. So this weird wizard god, who's like, I mean, he's there to help, ostensibly. We'll find more out about the Elemist later. But yeah, I was buying in until now. Stay with me for a second, because I know that the instinct is to fall off. We're in book, like, 9. Like, he's cooler than he seems at first. Okay. So the Elemist is building a zoo. The Elemist tells the Animorphs, hey, listen, I don't usually interfere with these wars, right? Like, generally I try and not be too involved with this sort of stuff. However, this war has been going on for like 50 years, and it's already destroyed a few different really beautiful species in creation. So, I'm going to build a zoo with a small group of people from each of the species that I know, because I'm omnipotent, that the humans are going to get wiped out. So I'm going to build a little zoo, and you guys can come join the zoo. You and your families can come join my zoo. I thought these books were about turning into animals. Yeah, remember when I said that K.A. Applegate wrote this about trying to get kids to realize how cool animals are? Okay, now looking for these on Kindle Unlimited and Audible. So they are being published on Audible, but it's kind of a slow process. And there's 60 of them, and the problem is they're really short. So, like, you have to spend a credit on a book that's, like, less than 100 pages or with giant print. But yeah, they are wonderful. So God is building a zoo, and he offers the Animorphs, come join my zoo. And they're like, definitely not. Leave us alone. Why are you here? So he's like, okay, bet. let me show you what happens if you don't come join the zoo. So he takes them to the future. And he shows them their entire town, their entire city is completely wiped out except for one skyscraper. There is one skyscraper still standing. The entire town is entirely destroyed except for this building, and the Yeerks have completely taken over everything. And then Visser 3 shows up with evil Rachel, who has a slug in her head, and is like, I knew you would come. I don't know how they thought they knew that they would come from the future because God saved them from a centipede monster. Anyway, so they see the future, and then the Elemist is like, okay, so that's the offer. Come join the zoo, or else this is the future. And they're like, okay, fine, we're in. Take us to the zoo. And then he puts them back in the taxon. They morph back into humans, burst out of the taxon, and they're like, what the? The Elemist said we were going to go to a human zoo. Why are we back in the exact same situation we were in a minute ago? Except for Rachel. Rachel is the only one who's like, guys, y'all are dumb. Don't you guys realize there's no human zoo? He was trying to send us a message without it directly telling us what to do. It was like, how did you figure that out? And she's like, oh, I can't believe you guys are so slow. Obviously, he was trying to show us that one building is really important because the Yeerks leave it standing when they destroy the city. And everybody else is like, I don't know how you figured that out, but that's a really good idea. So they figure out that this building that is left standing in the dark future is the, like, Yeerk hub. That's the key to it all, is they have to get into that building, which is way easier than getting into the underground pool. So, this is when the gang gets violent. They've had a few encounters that were pretty grim. This one... Okay, so on the ground floor, like, it describes Marco grabs a couple of people's heads and starts smashing windows. Just the laws of physics. It's gruesome. So, they do this whole fight. They're taking on tons of bad guy aliens. They get up to, they like, get through the first couple of floors, and then they get to the elevator, and they're all standing there in the elevator, and this is from Rachel's perspective. Rachel goes to press the button on the elevator, and then she's, like, laughing because she didn't even realize her hand had been cut off in the fight. She tried to press a button with a bloody stump. And she's like, oh, that's silly. Morphs back into a human and then back into a bear, so she's ready for the next fight. Ages 8 to 12! Anyway, like, the only one who's not going ham in this fight is Cassie, because Cassie is Cassie. Okay, so they successfully destroy this big hub that's really important, right? That sounds tight if I'm 8. It's true. It's totally appropriate for 9-year-olds. Okay, yeah, okay, I'm glad you guys are with me. I just don't know what's happening if I'm 8. I think you know what a bloody stump is if you're 8. So it works, though. They destroy this big Yeerk tower, and they're like, okay, they'll rebuild soon enough, but this is a huge blow. And Yeerks start starving. The brain slugs start starving because they can't feed themselves. And people, like, in the middle of public will just start screaming as the Yeerks starve in their head and fall out of their ear. And they're like, this is awesome. This book is from Axe's perspective, and it talks about, like, their teacher in the middle of class starts freaking out, and a slug falls out of his head, and they're all celebrating because they're like, oh my gosh, it worked. We're starving out so many slugs, and the people are going to be fine. And Axe is like, yeah, I don't know how to tell these people, Yeerks will not leave witnesses. Anybody who survives their Yeerk falling out of their head is gonna get dealt with. And Axe just doesn't tell the other Animorphs about this. Super sketchy. So this is basically like... This book is really about, like, Axe kind of officially becoming an Animorph and, like, gaining their trust. Because to this point, he's just, like, he doesn't totally trust them because of Ciro's kindness, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, so Axe is gamer-pilled. He goes over to Marco's house, and Marco's like, okay, you can sit at the family computer, and you can play some video games. If my dad talks to you, you are only allowed to say yes and no answers. Don't talk to him very much. And that's how you end up with Marco's dad for most of it is saying, thinks that Axe's name is Yes. It's very good. Anyway. He goes to Marco's house and whacks Marco. No. Marco's chill. Marco just, like, has to go to the bathroom or whatever. He leaves for a little bit, leaves Axe to be on the family computer, and Axe is like, right on. I love games. So he hops on the computer and he starts gaming. And he's like, oh, it's like a space simulator game. That's cool. I wonder if I can plug in, like, the actual secret to intergalactic travel. I wonder what happens if I plug in the real physics of intergalactic travel into this game, this simulator. And he's like, oh, it worked. That's fun. And then he's just done. Yeah, you find out later he was not playing a video game. Remember how I said his dad worked at NASA? He was plugging all of that information into a NASA database simulating space missions. That will have consequences down the road. Axe is kind of dumb, but adorable. Because he thought he was playing a video game. That's cute. Okay, so Axe goes to the local observatory and basically calls home. He calls the Andalite home planet. How can you possibly have that big of a oopsie? It's fine. It's not that bad. His thought is like, Marco said I could do video games on this computer. I have to assume that whatever's on this computer is just games, not NASA flight simulations. Anyway, so he goes to the observatory, uses this giant telescope to signal the Andalite homeworld, and basically catch them up to speed about what's going on, right? So he tells them, hey, we lost the Battle of Earth. Send reinforcements. Prince Elfingor, my brother, is dead. And he gave this group of humans morphing technology. And everybody in the council freezes. Everybody back home talking to Axe is like... So they reveal what Ciro's kindness is. Ciro's kindness is essentially the prime directive from Star Trek. Basically, it's saying you can't give future technology to races before it's their time, right? So the reason for that is there was a scientist named Ciro who found this planet of slugs and wanted to help these slugs. So he was kind and taught them intergalactic travel. That species was called the Yeerks and led to the bloodiest intergalactic conflict of all time. So now the Andalites have the rule of Ciro's kindness. You cannot be nice to other species because it may come back to bite us, i.e. the Yeerks. So they say to Axe, so what you're telling me is you're using human technology to communicate with an alien homeworld, which they can almost certainly figure out at some point if they know what they're looking at. So you've already broken Ciro's kindness. And he was like, yeah, but I needed to radio guys and let you know. And they were like, okay. Here's the other thing. Prince Elfingor is a national hero. Don't you think that you want him to be... Don't you think you want your brother to be remembered as a hero of the Andalites? Heroes don't break Ciro's kindness. You could never forgive a hero for breaking Ciro's kindness. Maybe a hero's brother. Are you sure that he's the one who gave them the morphing technology and not you? Are you sure you didn't give them the morphing technology? So they basically, like, force Axe to take the fall for breaking their biggest law? That his brother broke it. Anyway, yeah, so the Andalites, this is where you start to see some moral gray area with the Andalites. And you're like, oh, maybe it's not good guy aliens versus bad guy aliens. Yeah. Oh, also, they make him swear to avenge his brother. Bro, Marco. Yeah, Marco's not paying good attention. Okay, so now we get into the time travel stuff. I'm gonna try and keep it light, or try and keep it a little snappy. It is kind of interesting. It's just also dumb. Okay, so basically, we're talking about the prequel book, which is called the Andalite Chronicles. And basically, Prince Elfingor, the guy we were just talking about, who dies at the start of the series, we get a book from his perspective before the Animorphs books. And he's looking for a thing called the Time Matrix, which was made by the Elemist. By the way, nobody believes the Elemist is real. They think that that's just a myth. But he hears about this Time Matrix, which is a thing created by the Elemist, which can warp reality. So he's looking after the Time Matrix. Also, there's some humans there because there's this species trafficking humans and artifacts, and yeah. You lost me? I'm just going to try and, like, grab the football and plow through, and then we can try and just see what happens. Okay, so there's humans there because they're being trafficked along with the Time Matrix. Nobody realizes what the Time Matrix is except Prince Elfingor. Prince Elfingor's, like, commanding officer... Prince Elfingor's commanding officer sacrifices himself so Elfingor can get the Time Matrix. That's how he gets captured by the Yeerks, and that's when you find out that Visser 3's body was Prince Elfingor's boss. It's really cool. Yeah, okay, what slide are we on? We're talking about the time travel part. You know, people at Target are looking at me, better go. That's entirely fair. Thanks for dropping by, Gametographer. Shout out to Principal Prickly. Yeah. So Principal Prickly, by the way, this whole time is just mad that the Andalites aren't taking him home. So he willingly becomes a Yeerk. He willingly is like, yeah, whatever, put a brain slug in me. At least you're not an Andalite. They're rude. So Prince Elfingor's boss sacrifices himself so Elfingor can get the Time Matrix. He successfully gets the Time Matrix, but when he's about to use it, everybody gets a hand on the Time Matrix at the same time. So everybody's thinking about a different place, so it creates a weird mashup of everybody's desired reality, and you end up in this weird hellscape that's a combination of Yeerk world and also Andalite world and also Earth. And it's very weird. And basically, that lady, I think her name is Lauren, I do not remember. Lauren and Prince Elfingor escape Hellworld. And they are like, bro, none of that was worth it at all. The Time Matrix was so not worth the trouble. Nothing changed in the end. I'm out the game. Prince Elfingor decides to morph into a human and then stay in human morph for more than 2 hours to live as a human, stuck in human form. Right? And he lives happily ever after with Lauren. Except The Elemist shows up and is like, hey, Elfangor, you don't get to be happy ever after? I need you to go back because now you've ruined the timeline. The timeline won't make any sense if you're here. It's making paradoxes in the timeline. None of that is true. Because Tobias is Lauren's son. Tobias is the child of Lauren and Prince Elfangor. And then the Elemist said that he had to go back to the main timeline to fix the timeline, in reality creating a weird paradox where Tobias is... I'm lost? Yeah, it's weird. The Elemist completely lies. And as far as we can tell, he lies just to try it because he likes Tobias and he wants to make Tobias happen. But then he makes Elfangor go back to the main timeline and then give the morphing power to the Animorphs and start the whole series. This is a book trying to get kids to think that animals are neat. How do people not talk about Animorphs more often? It's become endgame? Yeah. All right, that is the weirdest part. I promise. I promise that's the weirdest part. Oh, the Elemist is like, now we're back to the main time. The Elemist has been like pestering Tobias to get him to do stuff. And Tobias is like, bro, I'll just tell me what you want me to do and I'll go do a mission. But you gotta stop being so weird about it and just like sending me subliminal messages. So the Elemist gives Tobias his morphing ability back, but now his base form is a hawk. So he can turn into a human, but only for 2 hours, and then he has to go back to his base form, which is a hawk. And now basically for the rest of the series, Tobias like has to wrestle with like, he can turn back into a human and then get stuck that way, leave the fight, but live a human life. So it's very difficult to be Tobias. Oh, and then like the Elemist brings him back in time to the night before they become Animorphs and lets bird Tobias acquire human Tobias, so now he can morph into human. It's weird. Okay, so now we get to talk about the David saga, which is, we're back to talking about the actual Animorphs. We're done talking about the Elemist for like a while. I don't think the Elemist comes back up. Thank goodness. So the David saga, okay. So they show up to school, because remember, they still go to school. They're fighting a war with aliens, and also they still have 9th period social studies. So they show up to school, and this kid, David, just casually has the morphing cube. The cube that gave them their powers in the first place. They assumed it was destroyed on the night that they became Animorphs. No! This kid David has it. I don't know why. So, basically, David is bragging at school about, like, yeah, I got this fancy cube. I don't really know what it does. And then the Yeerks obviously hear that, and they show up and destroy his house. And there's a huge battle between the Animorphs and the Yeerks at David's house, and it ends up, like, destroying his house. It's a great battle. But then, basically, the team, like, argues about, what do we do about David? This kid knows way too much, and he won't keep his mouth shut. And now he's seen us morph to try and defend his house. So, we don't want to kill him because Cassie is around. And also because we don't kill people. You can't see me wink with the sunglasses. Or he can join the Animorphs. So they begrudgingly induct him into the Animorphs. Jake Paul image. Yeah, Jake Paul is standing in as Jake. So they begrudgingly, all right, David, welcome to the team. You're an Animorph now. And David's the worst. Remember how I said they don't use the powers for recreational purposes? First thing he does is break into a hotel and live like a king for a while. Everyone's like, David, you can't do that. And then they like, all right, David, we're going to go on mission, so you need to acquire a battle morph. So he's like, okay, I want 5. And they're like, okay, you don't really need 5, but sure. And they're like, what do you want? And he's like, well, I want a lion because it's bigger than Jake's tiger. I want a polar bear because it's bigger than Rachel's grizzly bear. I want, and he just goes through each person and picks a bigger, better morph than them. He's so cringe. That's just not even true. What's not true? That a lion's bigger than a tiger? I don't know if he's actually bigger, but I don't know. He just thinks he wants a better cat than Jake. So, yeah, David is the worst. The only cat in history bigger than a Siberian tiger is a saber-toothed tiger. I don't know that he's a Siberian. I think he's a Bengal. I don't actually know if those are different. Anyway, David is a terrible Animorph. And he does a bunch of really dark stuff. And eventually the team is like, okay, David gots to go. So Jake, go talk to David and tell him he's got to shape up. He's got to be a good guy now. So Jake tries to talk some sense into him. And then David turns into a lion and attacks Jake at the mall in front of people. Jake is not ready for this. They fight as big cats in the mall. And then David leaves him there for dead. He like slashes his neck and then dips and leaves Jake bleeding out. It's insane. He should be a crab. I'll stay tuned. You're gonna get close to your wish. Okay, so the rest of the gang is like, okay, now we have to do something about this. Basically, they bait David onto an island. Most of the people are like cordial with David because they're like, well, we're stuck with him, so we gotta be like at least polite. Except Rachel. No surprise. Rachel is like really mean to David, which is totally deserved. So she basically says like, hey, you took on Jake. Literally, who cares? Jake's a baby. Fight me on the island just outside of like our little city. Go show up to the island and I'll fight you. And David's like, bet. And so she turns into a rat and is running away from him, dives into a little hole. He turns into a rat to follow her, also dives into the hole. But on the other side, there's a cage, and they slam the cage shut. And then he's like, hey, what's happening? What's going on here? They trap him in the cage for 3 hours, leaving him stuck as a rat. They release him on the island. They all turn into birds and fly off the island. And as they're flying away, they still telepathically are hearing his thoughts screaming at them, swearing at them, furious that they're leaving him behind. And they talk about it constantly after that. That's dark? Yeah. So they don't really have like normal sleep. They don't talk about normal sleep. They just talk about what nightmares everybody had each night. Like, for Rachel, she turned into a shrew one time, and it really messed her up. The rest of the series, she wakes up from nightmares covered in maggots. Because she's just having these nightmares of what it was like being a shrew and being covered in maggots and waking up terrified of being a shrew again. But everybody has nightmares about what they did to David for the rest of the series. Nobody feels good about it. Ukulele time? Okay. Well, David was the worst. And David turned into a lion to attack Jake. David put Jake in the ICU, but as a tiger. I don't know if they have separate ICUs for tigers. But then they turned him into a rat, and then they left him on the island, and then they left him on the island, and then they left him on the island. I repeated that to represent the way that those thoughts haunted the Animorphs for the rest of the series. That's the end of the David saga. Thank you. We're getting there with ukulele time. That's coming together. He dead? He's probably alive on the island. Saving up for the big one. That's smart. Okay. So we're on like book 20, and this is when I realized that I have like 100 slides, and we need to kind of speed things up here. So I'm gonna breeze past most of the other stuff, and I'm just gonna focus on the other big stuff that happens. Book 20. Yeah, there's 62 books in this series. This is a whole series? Yes. It's 62 of these. Okay, so there's this race of robot android dogs called the Chi that are really, really powerful. What book is this? I don't remember this specific book. So they find out about the Chi, but the Chi have like a robot assistant thing in their brain that they can't hurt anybody. But they're like god tier powerful because they were created by this ancient civilization of hyper advanced aliens. So these robot dogs are insanely powerful, and there's a book where basically the whole goal is to override their protocol to not hurt anything. Because if they can turn the Chi into soldiers, game over. They're way too powerful. The Yeerks cannot fight them. Right? So during the big final fight, they successfully override the Chi, but Marco is stabbed through the heart and fully dies. And then the Chi's protocol is overridden. The Chi murders 50 bad guys alone in 60 seconds. And then brings Marco back from the dead. Weird robot hologram dog. And then after that book, the dog is like, hey, so committing those acts of violence was not only beyond my protocol, I also hated it. So I'm going to reinstate my protocol because that was a shade of violence too far for me. A robot hologram dog. So that's that story. So as we get into the end game, Cassie, they're like, we don't have enough soldiers. We need more soldiers. So they start drafting disabled kids. Because they're like, hey, the Yeerks don't take over the bodies of people with disabilities. So we should give those people powers. So yeah, and some of them it actually cures their disability. Anything that you aren't born, like if you were paralyzed, if you'll never walk again, morphing will fix you. But yeah, so they hey, child soldier alarm, wee woo, wee woo, wee woo. Cassie drafts a bunch of disabled kids into being Animorphs. And we'll talk about the They call them the B team. We'll talk about the B team again later. The gang meets the devil. So there's the Ellimist, and then there's the Cryak. The Cryak is the bad guy. So basically, more child soldiers. Wee woo, wee woo. The way they meet the Cryak, who's the devil, is they go to this planet where they meet this like perfect killing machine species. And they're like, oh no, this is the perfect Yeerk species. If the Yeerks get their hands on these guys, then they won't need Earth at all. They'll be too powerful anyway, and they'll take over every planet. So, but they figure out that these things are children. These perfect killing machine aliens that are perfect for the Yeerks are children. And when they figure that out, it also, like, fully self-actualizes the aliens, and they realize that what they're doing is wrong, and they love violence, and they realize that violence is wrong, and they are just all weep, because they're like, we were bred for violence, and now we realize that's bad. And then the Cryak appears, and he's like, you got me. I was trying to create super soldiers that love violence for the Yeerks. I'm out of here. And he snaps his fingers and kills all the child soldiers. He creates this army of child soldiers. The child soldiers are freed from the spell, and then the devil kills them all. It's insane. This is also where you find out, basically, the reason the Ellimist and the Cryak exist is because they hate each other. They want to fight. But if they fight, they will destroy all of creation. And they're like, we don't want to do that. So instead, we're just going to, like, puppet pull the strings and never directly interfere. So the Ellimist likes the Andalites. The Cryak likes the Yeerks. But basically, after this, the Ellimist and the Cryak are like, okay, this is getting way too complicated. We're getting back out. How far are we? I have one last arc. Wait. Okay. We're very close. We have one last arc, and then we talk about Endgame. So the last arc is Tobias gets captured. So basically, the Yeerks invent a anti-morphing ray, and they don't want them to know that the anti-morphing ray works, so they send in Tobias, and they have him turn from an Andalite into a hawk, and then they zap him with the ray, and he stays a hawk, and they're like, oh, the anti-morphing thing doesn't work. And it successfully convinces the Yeerks that their anti-morphing gun doesn't work, which it does. So they're like, yay, mission success. But then Tobias is not able to get away, and they capture Tobias, and they torture him for months. And then when they finally do free Tobias, there's basically just a book of Tobias talking about, like, how much trauma he has from being tortured as a bird for months. Okay. The gang briefly frees some child soldiers. That's the Cryak thing I was talking about. Let's get into the end game. I need a second. Okay. So, remember Visser 1? Hydrate? Thank you. So, if you remember, the two main bad guys are Visser 1 and Visser 3. Visser 3 wants to kill half the population and then just easily infest the rest of the population. Visser 1 wants to take the cult approach and try and get people to willingly become hosts. And it's kind of going well, but it's pretty slow. So you find out in the Visser Chronicles, which is probably the best book in the series. In the Visser Chronicles, you find out that the reason she wants to preserve so much human life is that she has been living as a human long enough. She has 2 kids. she has fallen in love with human culture. Because Yeerks went from being slugs in a pool who couldn't really do anything to having intergalactic space travel. They didn't have a lot of, like, culture. They never, like, told stories. They never wrote anything. So when they show up to Earth, they start watching TV. And so they watch some Star Trek, and they are so terrified because they're like, oh, no. These humans are way more advanced than we thought because they think it's all a documentary. But eventually they figure out. And Visser 1 kind of falls in love with the humans because she's like, oh, this is actually kind of a great culture. So she raises human children. And eventually she's like, I don't want this to keep going. So she calls in the Animorphs and basically snitches on herself. Who's in the pic? That's Maria LaGuerta from the Dexter series. I don't know. She just has a very professional vibe. Where'd she get them kids? I mean, we're like 5 years into the war right now. She had a family. She made some kids. Okay, so she gets in trouble for calling in the Animorphs and snitching on herself. Visser 3 is also put on trial because he has been going a little ham. However, they're like, we don't have the time at this important part of the war to pull both of you off planet. Visser 1, your subtle approach is over. You're relocated to a new planet. Visser 3, you're in charge now. So Visser 1 is relocated to a new planet. However, they do successfully save Marco's mom, who's the host for Visser 1. And, okay, this is a messed up part. So, oh man, I forgot to mention. The reason she calls in the Animorphs is because Marco's dad figures out that code on his computer that Axe left there is the secret intergalactic travel. So the Yeerks are about to, like, be like, oh, the humans are getting too advanced. We just gotta kill them all. And that's when Visser 1 calls in the Animorphs because she's like, I want to preserve human life. They successfully save Marco's mom. And then Marco, remember, Marco's dad got remarried to a new woman who is not his mom. Marco tells his dad, hey, we got to get out of here. We got to get you safe. Also, your new wife is a controller. So she never actually loved you. She was a Yeerk the whole time. It's not true. Marco lies to his dad to get him to leave his new wife so he'll get back with Marco's mom. Insane. Marco, that's the worst thing Marco does. And he talks about, like, he has nightmares about that. Okay, so Visser 3 is the new president of the of the Yeerks on Earth. Okay. At this point, all the gloves are off. This is just like Parent Trap. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so remember how they had the Morphin Cube from back when David was being the worst? So Jake's brother, the one who's a controller, the one who has a Yeerk in his head earlier, steals the Morphin Cube. Also, it's just very convenient that the person I have representing Jake has a famous brother. So Jake's brother steals the Morphin Cube. And Jake is like, okay, it's been long enough. I've been trying as hard as I can to not... I don't want to kill my brother, but that's what it's come to. Jake gets ready to kill his brother and stop him from stealing the Morphin Cube. And then Cassie is like, no murder. And Jake's brother gets away with the Morphin Cube and turns all the Yeerks into Morphin Yeerks. So now everything is on the table because now the Yeerks can morph. So, yeah, okay, so the Yeerks can morph. They call in the B team, those disabled kids that Cassie drafted, and they go to the military. And Jake is basically like, hey, you have to lock away your best soldiers for 3 days. Monitor them constantly. And if none of them have brain slugs, I'll give them superpowers. And by the way, when they first... when they show this all to the general is like, okay, obviously you're insane. And then one of the, like, colonels tries to shoot him with a laser because the colonel was controlled by a Yeerk. And they were like, oh, okay, so that's true. So now we have people in the military who can morph. All the Yeerks can morph. We have a B team of disabled kids. And they nuke the Yeerk pool. Originally, they were worried about, like, we can't let all those innocent people die. That's gone. They kill thousands of innocent people. They fully nuke the Yeerk pool. The kids have no advantage. Basically, yeah. Except now, they have started starving the Yeerks. Now, the thing is, they can rebuild, right? They have basically a mothership that can come down and build a new Yeerk pool. And that's exactly what they do. They have a new ship come down and try and rebuild the pool. So they have Rachel go... They send all the A-team is going for the mothership. But they're like, we'll never get to it. It's their most guarded thing that the Yeerks have ever had. So they get the army and the B team of disabled children, again, to go run a suicide mission as a distraction. All of them are wiped out. Rachel successfully gets onto the mothership, turns into a bear, and just rips the thing apart, but dies in the process. Rachel dies. That is the end of the war. They successfully take out the ship. They've killed a lot of innocent people. They sacrificed all the B team and the soldiers and Rachel. Then we have a little time skip to about a year later. So, let's catch you up about what happened. The Andalites have started a lot of trade with Earth, mostly because Andalites will go to Earth for vacation. They will turn into humans so they can taste Cinnabons. It's an intergalactic tourist delicacy. So Marco and Axe are celebrities now because they can, like... Axe was raised in warrior culture. He was prepared for all of this. And Marco just makes everything into a joke so he can, like, compartmentalize, right? This is the second time suicide has been mentioned in a series for young children. Yeah. Why do they care so much about Cinnabon? Because they don't have mouths. The Andalites don't have mouths, so when they morph into humans, which do have mouths, they taste things, and it's like... Like, it's not even like seeing a new color. It's like getting a new sense and then seeing a new color with your new sense. And that color is Cinnabons. Cassie is out the game. Cassie's retired and is not doing well. She basically doesn't talk to people anymore. She only hangs out with her animals on the sanctuary. Jake and Cassie have broken up. Oh, they were a couple. I didn't really mention that. They were a couple. They've broken up, and he now works for the army training special operative Animorphs, basically. Because he didn't do well with peacetime. He was not able to deal with any of that. Tobias, in the wind. Nobody knows where Tobias is. And basically, like, he is a hawk. Hawks have a relatively short lifespan. He's probably dead. Another war has broken out, and Axe has gone missing. And then Jake goes on a suicide mission to go try and save Axe. End of the series. That is a very jarring ending. However, K.A. Applegate she's brilliant. I really like K.A. Applegate. And does he win? We don't know. He goes off to fight in the second war. It's implied that it's of, like, cosmic scale. It seems like it might be the Kryak, but we have no information on that. Jake goes on a suicide mission. End of book. So, a lot of people were not happy with this ending. And normally, I would chop it up to bad writing. However, K.A. Applegate, Catherine Alice Applegate, wrote a letter about the ending, right? And we're gonna go into a little. I really like this letter. I'm just gonna read it, and yeah. So this is by K.A. Applegate about the ending. Oh, sorry. Let me get a drink. Okay. Dear Animorph readers, quite a number of people seem annoyed with the final chapter of the Animorph story. There's a lot of complaints that I let Rachel die, that I let Visser 1 live, that Cassie and Jake broke up, that Tobias seems to have been reduced to unexpressed grief, that there's no grand fight for the fight to end all fights, that there's no happy celebration, and everyone is mad about the cliffhanger ending. So I thought I would respond. Animorphs was always a war story. Wars don't end happily, not ever. Often relationships that were central during war dissolve during peace. Some people who are brave and fearless in war are unable to handle peace and feel disconnected and confused. Other times people in war make peace very easy. Always people die in wars. And always people are left shattered by the loss of loved ones. That's what happens. So that's what I wrote. Jake and Cassie were in love during the war and ended up going their separate ways afterwards. Jake, who was brave and capable during the war, was adrift during peace. Marco and Axe, on the other hand, moved easily past the war and even managed to experience some of the good effects. Rachel dies and Tobias will never get over it. That doesn't by any means cover everything that happens in a war, but it's a start. Here's what doesn't happen in war. There's no wondrous, climactic battle that leaves the good guys standing tall and the bad guys lying in the dirt. Life isn't a World Wrestling Federation smackdown. Even the people who win the war, who survive and come out the other side, with the conviction that they have done something brave and necessary, do a lot of celebrating. There is very little chanting of "We are number one" among people who have actually experienced war. I'm just a writer, and my main goal is always to entertain. But I've never let Animorphs turn into just another painless video game version of war, and I wasn't going to do it at the end. I've spent 60 books telling a strange, fanciful war story, sometimes very serious, sometimes more tongue-in-cheek. I've written a lot of action, a lot of humor, and a lot of sheer nonsense. But I have also, again and again, challenged my readers to think more about what they're reading, to think about right and wrong, not just who beat who, And to tell you the truth, I'm a little shocked that so many readers seem to believe that I'd wrap it all up with high fives and backslapping. Wars very often end, sad to say, just as ours did, with nearly seamless transition into another war. So you don't like the way our little fictional war came out? You don't like Rachel dead and Tobias shattered, Jake guilt-ridden? You don't like one war simply transitioning into another? Fine. Pretty soon, you will be of voting age and draft age. So when someone proposes a war, remember that even the most necessary wars, even the rare war where the lines between good and evil are clear and clean, ends with a lot of people dead, a lot of people crippled, a lot of orphans, widows, and grieving parents. If you're mad at me because that's what you have to take away from Animorphs, that's too bad. I couldn't have written any other way and remained true to my respect that I have always felt for the Animorph readers. K.A. Applegate. Thank you for listening to this big long rant. I love the Animorph series, but I also really love this letter. So I'm going to read that last sentence again. If you're mad at me because that's what you have to take away from Animorphs, that's too bad. I couldn't have written it any other way and remained true to the respect that I have always felt for Animorphs readers. K.A. Applegate. Thank you guys very much for being here. Good night and God bless.